Hey everybody, just wanted to give you something to look at to welcome you to RMI 670, maybe orient you with the course a little bit and then familiarize you with some of the expectations we're going to have, so it's not quite so intimidating to look at it just presented online. By now, everything is loaded into the class for week 1, so you'll be able to see that. Here, I've got it on my screen, that's what's showing. So I've got a copy of the syllabus posted. This is the welcome video. And then we've got some slides that are going to kick off unit 1. So when I'm talking, you can follow along and you can use that to take notes. I would recommend printing out those pages. Probably not one slide per page, maybe 3 slides per page, but using that to take notes, it'll help keep you organized and it'll ultimately make your exam prep take less time. That's a big focus for me in this class. I want to respect your time. Okay, I know we have a lot of folks in here who have a lot of responsibilities, some with families, some with jobs, some with both. It's different from undergraduate for sure. So it's really important to me to make sure that if I ask you to do something, that it's worth the time it takes. So our first lecture video is posted. You can skip the first 19 minutes and 25 seconds of that. That's an introduction that I gave in a previous version of this course. I've decided I am going to reuse the taping I've done. I just don't think to spend 2 hours every week prepping a lecture that's basically the same as what I gave. I don't think that's a good use of time, especially the amount of editing that it takes. If you want to end up with 2 hours of finished video, that's about a 6-hour job. And to do that every single week, I would rather be spending time creating new assignments that do a better job of reinforcing some of the concepts that I think are important, having available time to talk with you if that's what you want. I think that's a better use of that time than simply recreating what I've already done. Plus, the lectures that I've been doing, what you're going to see was in front of a live studio audience, right? So they can ask questions. And I think that's helpful, more helpful than just me sitting in my living room talking to you and then having to wait for questions to come up. I actually think what you're going to watch is better than what you would have if I were to do this. Having said that, I will still do this every week to give you an idea of expectations and what we're going to do. So this week, big expectations. If you can get through this week, it's probably not ever going to be harder than this in terms of the amount of what I'm asking you to do. Maybe exam weeks might require more. So for this week, there's a video lecture to watch. After you cut out the first 20 minutes, it's about an hour and 20 minutes. Watch it in snippets, whatever you have to do, or sit down and make it one marathon session. That's okay. That's the advantage of online. It's up to you. There is a case assignment. You have to read a case, and then you have to apply some of the lessons here. I'll give you a tip on the case. The case was written for undergraduate students. And when you do that, you kind of have to make the problems obvious. So you may be reading through this case and saying, I can't believe any business would behave that way. That's good. Pretty much every paragraph, you're going to have a problem to deal with. And then the case assignment asks you to classify those problems a little bit in terms of how are we going to treat these risks. Then I've got a discussion assignment where I just want you to address really quickly in a couple paragraphs a situation where you've dealt with risk. In your professional life would be the best example if you've got that. That's going to be different for everybody. I want you to read each other's and see what you think. But it's a way that we can try to learn from each other, and it doesn't take a terrible amount of time. So I really like that. That's a discussion board assignment. It's called Introduction to Class. You see it right here. And then finally, we've got a journal article to read and take a quiz on. This journal article won a Nobel Prize. It's a big deal. You will not find too many business PhDs that are not familiar with this concept of prospect theory. Basically, what's going on is everybody understands the idea of evaluating decisions on the basis of expected utility. This comes up with a model that says, well, what about the choices that people make that don't seem to follow expected utility theory? So it's not as simple as saying, well, there's a 50% chance of having this outcome and a 50% chance of this outcome, so I simply multiply them across and I make my decision. This goes quite a bit deeper into that psychology to say that there's other factors at play when people face risk. It's not just a mechanical calculation of how well off people expect to be. That's the idea of expected utility. we know from experience that people violate expected utility theory all the time. This is providing a framework as to why that's the case. So you might think of something that was created in the late 70s, early 80s as old, but it was good enough to win a Nobel Prize. So having said that, when you look at the article, don't spend more than an hour with it. Okay, you don't need to memorize every little thing. You will want to have that article in front of you as you're taking this quiz, because it's going to say, well, in problem 12, what did we find out? Well, you're not going to remember what problem 12 is off the top of your head. You're going to have to scroll. Oh, okay, yeah, I remember now what it was. So you're going to want to have the article open as you take the quiz, but you also are going to want to have read through the article and know how it's structured before you try to take the quiz. Otherwise, you're going to be flipping pages and spending too much time doing reading instead of actually trying to answer the questions. So those are your expectations. Watch the lecture, complete the case assignment, do a discussion board, and then an article quiz. And like I said, that's more than we're going to have to do for most weeks. Deadline for this is always going to be the Sunday at the end of the day. So midnight Eastern time on Sunday. And I'll try to open the next week on the Saturday. So you'll always have the weekend before and the weekend after. That's about as much as I can do. I'm not allowed to allow you to work at your own pace. You do have to proceed through the course as a cohort. And that's not my decision. That's a university decision. So there's going to come times where you hear me say, yep, I'm an employee and I do what I'm told. This is one of those. But I will try to give you a little bit of flexibility there wherever I can. Okay. What else do I want you to know about the class? So those are the expectations for the first week. The rigor in this class, it's a master's level class. So it's got to be some level that's challenging you. And where that comes is through the exams. The exams are all short answer. I wouldn't call them essay, but you can't answer these questions in a sentence. A couple of paragraphs for each question. That's what's going to be required. Usually 15 questions. And you usually have 10 minutes per question spread out in total. So 250 minutes, that's 2.5 hours. I'm sorry, 150 minutes is 2.5 hours. That's how much time you'll have. That's enough time. As long as you're prepared, that's plenty of time. If you are going to try to approach the class without watching any of the lectures and just take the exams, the truth is you're not going to even understand what I'm asking on the exams, and that'll become very obvious to both of us. Please don't do that. Decide right now today, if you want to stay in the class, you're making a commitment to watch 2 hours of lecture every week. And if you can't do that, then this is not the right time for this class, and maybe it's not the right class for you. That's the expectation. We're also going to be expected to be doing textbook readings. For this first week, we got to read chapters 1 and 3. So that's an additional expectation. That's how we build in the rigor here. The good news is if you do that, you're going to learn a lot. I love risk management and insurance. My brain is very much wired towards risk management. You're going to hear me say this a lot. Risk management is a strategy. Insurance is a tactic. You can't always insure against all risks. And that doesn't mean you should disregard the risks that you can't insure against. That's where the interesting part of risk management comes in, is when you can't use insurance to deal with the risk. So that's something I want you to be thinking about as we move through the course. So rigor generally is going to come from the exams. I guess I should go over the syllabus really quickly. You can read this for yourself, but there are a couple things I'd like to highlight. Let me go ahead and do that. Let me see if I can download it and make it big so it shows up on the screen a little bit better. So it's really thinking about opening this document. There we go. Let me do enable editing. Let me scroll down and just increase the font size so it's not quite so small. So we have a tentative schedule at the bottom as well. But to start off with, there's just some basic stuff I want everybody to know. My name, Kevin Gatzliff. My office is in the business building on the top floor. 357 is the number. This semester, I doubt I'll be there very often. We're in an online class. However, I've got some pretty amazing flexibility. So if you want to talk with me, pretty much any time we can probably make available. I don't have that many times where I'm already committed. So that's extremely flexible. If you want to talk to me, I want to know about it, send me an email. That's always the best way to get a hold of me, is to email. As far as email goes, if you've sent me an email and it's been 24 hours and I haven't responded, send it again. That means I missed it. Just like you guys, I get all kinds of email. It's way too easy to miss important ones. So if you've emailed me and I haven't responded within 24 hours, please send it again. That means I missed it. And I promise I won't be angry. I won't judge you. I need to know. And it's entirely too easy to miss important things. So help me out there, and I'd appreciate that. Yep, the text is required. If you want to share one with somebody, I don't have a problem with that. I think the rental option is probably pretty inexpensive. I think it's around $60. The hardcover version is about $250. If I remember right, I wouldn't do that if it was me. There's an online edition that's far, far more economical. I would definitely consider that. And again, if you have some other way to get a hold of it, maybe a library's got it on reserve. Maybe you can share one with somebody. I don't have any problem with that. I do think you need access to a textbook to really get the most out of this class. You can read through the course objectives on your own. Attendance policy, well, we're not having live attendance, so it's a little bit different. I do expect that you watch all the lectures. Again, if you haven't watched the lectures, it's going to be hard to even do adequately well on the exam. You won't even understand the questions. You won't even know where to start. That's going to be frustrating. Exams are equally weighted. So the final is just our fourth exam. It's not comprehensive. If we run into a situation where you can't do it during the week it's assigned, let me know and we'll figure that out. If you're going to take an exam at a completely different time, then the exam has to be different to make sure that it's fair for everybody who's in the class. I'm not trying to punish people for taking exams at other times, but the idea that, well, I'll just take it later and I'll find out from somebody else what the questions are, I don't think that's right. So that's, if you're taking it at a different time than everybody else, you'll be taking a slightly different exam. It's still going to be short answer. It'll just be different. I'm not trying to punish people there. I'm just trying to make it fair. Along the lines of fairness, yeah, extra credit. If there's going to be any of that, everybody's going to have the same shot at that. Individual extra credit, you can't do that. So whatever you're going to do, you got to do for everybody. It's got to be fair. Half the points in this class come from exams. Half the points come from assignments. The assignments and activities are set up in a way so that if you do what I ask, you should be able to get full credit. The only time when people don't get full credit is if they don't do part of the assignment or they take shortcuts. So it's common in my assignments for me to say, a single sentence as an answer to this question is not acceptable. It needs to be a paragraph. Okay. As long as your paragraph makes sense, you're getting full credit. It's where people say, well, I know you asked for a paragraph, but I'm just not going to do that. All right, then you're not going to get full credit. So that and turning it on time, those are the important things. I do that because I know the exams can be difficult. I want to kind of counterbalance that impact by making it so that the grading on the assignments is mostly effort-based. So it's not about getting the right answers on the assignment. In fact, a lot of times I'm asking you for your opinion, and you don't have to worry about matching up with what I think. I just want to know what you think. And you'll see as we move on how that kind of works. So 800 total points, 400 from exams, 400 from assignments. I've got a grading scale laid out here. You'll notice if you actually divide by percentages, it's pretty forgiving. I don't use percentages to assign grades. I use number of points. So there doesn't need to be any rounding. I mean, yeah, if you end up with 675 points, yep, that's a B. And yep, that's only 1 point away from a B plus. There isn't anything I can do about that. I'm locked into this now that I've published it in the syllabus and I've said this is where the grade ranges are. So if you need a particular grade for whatever reason, well, here you go. This is how many points you're going to need. And you'll just want to monitor that as we go along. You'll see that when we do exams, I'll say more about this when we get closer to the first exam. My grading scale is a little bit unique. It's become clear to me that when you try to grade questions on a scale of 0 to 10, you're probably implying precision that you don't really have. Are you really sure that a question that you graded a 7 is exactly 10% weaker than a question that you graded as an 8? That becomes harder and harder and harder to believe the more gradations you have along your grading scale, right? So I'll say more about this when I get to exams. I grade in 0, 1, and 2, and that's it. 2, you nailed it. That's a perfect answer. I can hold this up to the class and say, this is the answer I was looking for. One, you've got some elements here that are right, but there's something significant, something major that isn't quite right. And then 0 is reserved for, you're pretty far off here. This isn't at all what I was asking about. So it helps me to be able to grade those exams more quickly, but then it means you have to apply some sort of adjustment to put them in a scale that people are familiar with. And so that's what I'm talking about here. That adjustment is something that brings our total points into alignment with what you'd expect. The last two things on here are required by the university. If you've got special needs and accommodations for that I need to know about, please let me know. Sooner the better. And then the diversity statement should be on every syllabus you have. This isn't any different. So you can read about that there. We've got a schedule. The first exam, the first unit, I'll put pieces of that unit up week by week. And it'll be 4 weeks from today that I'll open the first exam. And then you'll have the week to complete that. And in weeks where we have exams, I try to make it so that's the only thing you have to do. I also try to make it so that lecture for that week is a little bit shorter. That's kind of the pattern I always used to follow, because that exam, that's a 2.5-hour commitment potentially. I want to make sure that that's not eating away at other things that you have to do. So at some time in that week, you'll need a 2.5-hour time that you can slot in to say, I'm going to do my exam here. And then if you take the full time, you'll have that available. I imagine some people can probably do it in 90 minutes, in an hour and a half. Don't plan on doing it in 15 minutes. That's not possible to do a good job there. The questions are big enough and require you to think enough that you aren't going to be able to do it in 1 minute per question. Again, we're looking at a couple paragraphs per question. So 10 minutes a question makes more sense. And again, that's if you're prepared. There may be a question or two that completely blindsides you. It's out of 15 questions. That isn't going to be something that terribly hurts you. I'll say more about the exam later. I'll save that. So exam dates are on here. This is when I'll open those exams, and then they'll be open for the week. The exception is the final. There, you'll still have a week to work on that, but here I have to identify when it's going to be closed. And all the due dates are going to be on a Sunday. This is the exception. The final is due at the end of finals week. And so that's a Friday. Again, more to say about that as we go. Okay, so I think for a welcome video to the class, this is good enough. Again, the next thing you should do, start watching that lecture and make sure you can access it. Adobe Connect is what the university is using to deliver these videos, and that should not be new to you unless this is your very first master's class. Either way, you want to verify that that's working. It was working for me, but I won't feel good until I know for a fact that it's working for you. So the very next thing you should do, even if you don't have time to watch the whole lecture, click on video lecture 1 and just make sure you can access it. And if you're having trouble, let me know. We'll fix it. And we'll go from there. So thanks a lot, you guys. If you have questions, email me anytime. And I usually try to be pretty quick on that response. Again, if it goes longer than a day, that means I missed it. So please don't be afraid to let me help you out there. Okay, that's enough for a welcome. Welcome. Glad to have you, and I'm excited to work through this material together with you. Thanks a lot.